I used to tell myself I was the kind of person who didn't get carried away. I paid my bills early. I kept my personal and business accounts separate. I didn't gamble. I didn't manifest money by lighting candles or buying courses from strangers on the internet. I ran a small printing and packaging shop outside Columbus that I'd bought from my old boss when he retired. Nothing glamorous, but steady. Boxes for local bakeries, labels for breweries, inserts for subscription kits. Boring work that kept the lights on and, for a long time, made me feel safe. Then the invoices started stretching. A bakery would ask for net 60 instead of net 30. A brewery would forget a payment until I called twice. My paper supplier tightened terms. My line of credit, the one I'd had for years, got reviewed and clipped like a hedge. I told myself it was temporary. Post-pandemic wobble. Inflation. Everyone was feeling it. That's the story I repeated calmly to my employees, to my husband, to myself. Right up until the day I laughed in a bank office and the sound came out wrong, like I was borrowing it from someone else. The bank manager was younger than me, clean-cut in that soft, corporate way. He slid papers across the desk, pointing with a pen that looked like it cost more than my first car. "We're not calling your note," he said. "We're just adjusting the risk." I nodded like I understood. I'd been through renewals before, but the numbers on the page didn't feel like my business. Higher interest, lower limit, a requirement for additional collateral. "Personal guarantee," he said, as if it were a harmless phrase. I started. He didn't look up. "We need more. Inventory's less liquid than it used to be, and your receivables are aging." That word, aging, hit like a bruise. In my head, aging was my mother's hands, my own creaky knees, not invoices I was owed. I tried to stay measured. I really did. I asked what they needed. He listed things. Appraisals, updated financials. And he added, "We'd like to see an outside infusion, equity, partner, something that changes the picture." On the way out, I caught my reflection in the glass doors. A woman in a practical coat with a folder clutched too tight. I thought absurdly of high school, of hallway glass, of people seeing you as something you didn't choose. That night, I told my husband, Tom, in the careful voice I used when discussing expenses. Tom listened, chewing slowly, then said, "So we tighten up?" "Sure," I said. "We can cut discretionary stuff. Hold off on the bathroom remodel. Maybe delay the new press." Tom made a face like he'd tasted something bitter. "You can't delay the press if you need it to fulfill orders." "I know. That's why I'm calling around. Maybe there's a private lender. Maybe I bring on a silent partner." He brightened at that. "You know who would be good? Someone with cash who doesn't want to run it." "Like who?" I asked, though I already felt the answer coming in the way he leaned back. Tom said a name I hadn't said out loud in decades. "Cal Harper." I stared at him. "How do you even know Cal Harper?" Tom shrugged. "He's on the Chamber of Commerce board. He was at that fundraiser last fall. Older guy, quiet. He asked me what you did. He remembered you went to Ridgeview." My stomach tightened. Ridgeview was the high school. Cal Harper was the boy I'd laughed at in the cafeteria when he dropped his tray. The sound of plastic forks skittering, milk spreading like a stain. It wasn't my proudest moment, but I'd stored it away as harmless teenage cruelty. "We all did things." "Absolutely not," I said too quickly. Tom pressed. "He's got money. Real money. He invests in local businesses." "People like that don't just invest," I said. "They buy." Tom smiled, patient. "Maybe you should let someone buy a piece. Isn't the point to survive?" I slept badly, waking with a dry mouth and the sensation of falling behind an invisible line. In the morning, I went to the shop early, before the employees arrived. I walked the floor, listening to the hum of machines warming up, the faint chemical edge of ink. This place had always steadied me. My father had worked at a factory until it closed, then drank until his liver gave out. I'd built my life around not being at anyone's mercy. By noon, 2 clients had called to push payments. One said cheerfully, "You know how it is." Another promised to square up soon. in the same tone people use when they say they'll meet for coffee. I told myself not to panic. Panic makes you sloppy. When Tom called that afternoon and said, "I set up a lunch with Cal," I heard myself laugh, short, sharp, and then I realized I wasn't laughing because it was funny. I was laughing because the alternative was admitting I was trapped. We met Cal at a steakhouse that still believed in heavy menus and dim lighting. He was taller than I remembered, his hair silver now, his posture straight. He wore a plain suit, no flashy watch, nothing that screamed money, which in itself felt like a kind of display. He stood when we approached. "Mary," he said, and used my name like it had been sitting on his tongue for years. His eyes flicked to Tom, polite. "Thomas." Tom beamed at being called by his full name. I sat down and kept my hands folded. I told myself, business. This is business. Cal didn't start with small talk. He asked about my shop, my clients, my equipment. He had done homework. He knew the make and model of the press I wanted. He knew the biggest customer I'd just landed. He even knew the supplier who'd tightened terms. "You're cash-strapped," he said, not unkindly. "Not unprofitable. That's important." I felt heat in my face. "We're managing." He nodded. "Banks don't care about managing. They care about ratios." Tom said, "We were thinking maybe an investment." Cal leaned back. "I can do that. Convertible note. Or equity. Or I can buy the bank paper and restructure it. Depends on what you're willing to live with." There it was, options that all sounded like different flavors of surrender. He looked at me, not Tom. "Do you remember me, Mary?" I could have lied. I could have pretended we were old friends. But my throat tightened with something like shame. "Yes," I said. Driving home, Tom was almost giddy. "He's perfect. He's not some shark from New York. He's local. He gets it." "He gets it," I repeated. But what I meant was, he gets me. He remembers. I spent that week gathering financials for Cal like I was confessing. Profit and loss statements, aging reports, tax returns. My business reduced to spreadsheets and line items, my life translated into numbers that could be judged. Cal toured the shop on Friday. He walked slowly, hands clasped behind his back, listening to the machines, watching my employees work. He asked one of them about overtime and remembered the answer. He noticed the scuffed floor near the loading bay and asked if we'd had forklift issues. Afterward, in my office, he sat across from me and said, "I'll be blunt. You have a leak." "A leak," I repeated. "Money's leaving faster than it should, given your sales. Not just interest, not just supplies, something else." My first instinct was denial, immediate and almost comforting. "No," I said. "We're tight. I watch everything." Cal didn't argue. He slid a folder toward me. Inside were printouts, copies of checks, wire transfers, payments I recognized but hadn't approved. The payees were unfamiliar. My mouth went dry. "Where did you get this?" Cal's voice stayed calm. "I asked your bank for the last 12 months. They'll show it to anyone serious about buying the note." He said buying the note like it was a normal thing, like he bought groceries and debt in the same afternoon. I took the folder home and went through it at my kitchen table, the way I used to do with bills when I was young and scared. Tom hovered, then finally sat down. "What is all that?" I pointed at a transfer. "Do you know what Kestrel Consulting is?" Tom squinted. "No, probably a vendor." "It's not in our vendor list." My voice was still controlled, but there was a tremor underneath it. "And this, Mason Ridge Holdings. Another one. Thousands at a time." Tom's expression changed, subtle as a shadow. Maybe it's the payroll service." "It's not." I flipped pages. The amounts added up. Not a little. A lot. Enough to explain the tightening, the strain, the sense of slipping. "Tom," I said, quieter now, "who authorized these?" He stared at the papers too long. Then he said, "I was going to tell you. There are phrases that instantly turn your stomach. That one did." Tom swallowed. "I borrowed against the business. Just temporarily. For something personal. But it was supposed to be short-term." I waited, still in denial because the truth was too ugly to swallow whole. For what? He didn't answer right away. He rubbed his palms on his jeans like a teenager. Finally he said, I got into some things. Investments. A friend's opportunity. How much? I asked, and the way my voice cracked made me hate myself. Tom said a number that made the room tilt. Tom tried to explain it like he was giving a presentation. He'd put money into a private real estate deal, then another. Then, when those stalled, he tried to make it back with something else. Crypto, he admitted like he was confessing an affair. Leverage. Borrowing to chase losses. I listened, numb, as if the story belonged to someone else's marriage. My shame came before my anger. Shame that I hadn't seen it. Shame that my careful life had been undermined from inside my own kitchen. Shame that I'd preached discipline and still ended up here. How did you even access the accounts? I asked. Tom looked down. You left me as an authorized user. For emergencies. An emergency, apparently, was him wanting to feel like a smart man with a secret. The next morning, I went to the shop and closed my office door. I stared at my computer screen until the numbers blurred. I wanted to scream. Instead, I called Cal. He answered on the second ring. Mary, I heard myself say. My husband stole from the business. There was a pause, not of shock but of calculation. How much do you know? Enough, I said, and then my voice sharpened. Did you know? Is that why you said there was a leak? I suspected, Cal said. I've seen it before. You've seen it? I repeated, anger rising now, finally. So what? You come in as the savior? He didn't flinch. I'm not a savior. I'm an investor, and your bank is about to call your note. Cal came to my office that afternoon. He set down a legal pad and spoke in measured terms. Options, consequences, timelines. If the bank called the note, I'd have 30 days to pay or refinance. Couldn't. If I defaulted, they could seize equipment, freeze accounts, ruin my ability to buy supplies. Employees would leave. Clients would scatter. Tom's borrowing wasn't just theft. It was sabotage with paperwork. What do you want? I asked Cal. Cal folded his hands. I'll buy your note from the bank. I'll inject cash to stabilize operations. In return, I get controlling interest. There it was again. Survival as surrender. I built this, I said, and I hated how small my voice sounded. Cal nodded. Yes, you did, and you can keep running it. You're good at it, but you will not own it the way you used to. I stared at him, and something from the past rose up. Cafeteria noise, a tray falling, laughter bursting out of me because it made me feel powerful for a second. I'd forgotten the way power works. You don't get it for free. Someone pays. You must be enjoying this, I said, bitter. Cal's eyes were steady. If I wanted revenge, Mary, I would have bought your debt quietly and foreclosed. I'm offering you a way to keep the doors open. That was twist one, though I didn't call it that then. The boy I laughed at wasn't here to humiliate me. He was here because he already had his hands on my throat through my bank. I told Tom I was considering Cal's deal. Tom looked relieved in a way that made my skin crawl. See? He'll fix it. He'll own it, I corrected. Tom flinched, then tried to smile. You'll still run it. It'll be fine. It won't be fine, I wanted to scream, but I didn't, because I was already doing the math. My employees' mortgages, my supplier relationships, my own retirement account that wasn't as padded as I pretended. That night, after Tom fell asleep, I went through our personal finances. Not the business, ours. I found another set of debts. Credit cards I didn't know about. A home equity line I hadn't signed for. My chest tightened. I pulled the loan documents and looked at the signature. It was mine, sort of. The loops were right, the slant familiar, but it wasn't how I sign. It was a forgery done by someone who had watched me write checks for years. I didn't wake Tom. I sat in the dark living room with the papers spread out, feeling something cold settle into my bones. In the morning, I called an attorney. She listened and said, carefully, "This is criminal." I stared at my shop keys on the counter, at my wedding ring on my finger. Criminal sounded like a word for other families. That was twist 2. Tom hadn't just raided my business. He'd hollowed out my life, and he'd done it with my name. I confronted Tom in the kitchen, papers between us like a physical barrier. He tried denial first, then tears, then anger when I didn't soften. "You were so controlling," he snapped. "I couldn't breathe around your spreadsheets." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd that discipline was now being blamed for his theft. "I'm calling the police," I said. Tom's face went pale. "You can't. Watch me." He reached across the table and grabbed my wrist, not hard enough to bruise, but hard enough to remind me that marriage is also leverage. "If you do that," he said, voice low, "I'll tell them things." "What things?" I asked, and my stomach tightened because I already knew there were things. Tom released me and leaned back, breathing fast. "That cash job you did for the dispensary, the one you didn't report, the times you paid guys under the table. You think you're clean? You think you're better than me?" I felt my face burn. Shame again, sharp and immediate, because he wasn't wrong. I cut corners. Not like him, not reckless, but enough that the idea of investigators in my books made my mouth go dry. I didn't call the police that day. I told myself it was strategic, that I needed to protect the business, the employees, myself. But the truth was uglier. I was afraid my own compromises would drown me. That was twist 3. My responsible life had enough rot in it that Tom could hold it like a knife. I signed Cal's deal the following week. The attorney went over the documents, pointing out what I was giving up. I listened, nodded, and felt like I was watching someone else sign away a future I'd planned. Cal wired money into the business account the same day. Bills got paid. The supplier released my next shipment. The bank stopped calling. For a brief moment, it felt like a resolution, like the crisis had peaked and passed. Tom moved into the guest room. We spoke in clipped sentences about logistics. I told myself we'd separate quietly later, once things stabilized. I told myself that, with Cal's cash, I could rebuild. Maybe even buy back equity over time. Cal's contract had language about performance milestones. I clung to those like a lifeline. Cal started showing up more. Not constantly, but enough to remind everyone whose name was on the new paperwork. He didn't boss my employees around. He asked questions. He adjusted pricing. He renegotiated vendor terms with a firmness I'd never allowed myself. Sales improved. Margins improved. My shop looked healthier on paper than it had in a year. And then Cal asked to see a specific set of old records, contracts from 20 years ago, back when I'd bought the business. "Why?" I asked. Cal didn't smile. "Because I need to confirm something about how you acquired this place." My stomach tightened. It was a purchase. Clean. Cal slid a document across my desk. "Your seller wasn't the original owner." I stared at the document, a chain of ownership I'd never questioned. My old boss had sold me the shop, yes. But before him, the business had belonged to someone else. Someone who had died, apparently with unresolved debts. Debts Cal's investment firm had acquired, quietly, years ago. "You've been involved with this business before?" I asked, voice thin. Cal's gaze stayed steady. "My father was involved. He financed the original owner. The owner defaulted. My father lost a significant amount of money." I felt something shift, like a floorboard giving way. "So this is personal." Cal's jaw tightened. "Everything is personal when money disappears." I remembered, suddenly, a rumor from high school. Cal's father having problems. Cal working nights. Cal not going to college like everyone expected. I'd never cared enough to find out why. "And you waited 40 years to..." "What?" I asked. "To get your money back through me?" Cal's voice stayed controlled. "I didn't seek you out. Your husband did when he started sniffing around for capital. But once I saw the books, once I saw the name, yes, I recognized the thread. The thread. Like all of us were stitched into a pattern we didn't see. That was twist 4. Cal wasn't just rescuing my shop because he liked local businesses. He was closing a circle his family had bled from, and I had walked into it without looking. I should have walked away then. sold what was left, taken a job somewhere, let the shop become someone else's problem. But I didn't. I stayed. Partly because I felt responsible for my employees. Partly because I couldn't stand the idea of ending my life with the word failed attached to it. Also, this is the part that makes me feel sick to admit. I stayed because Cal made it easy to stay. He didn't flirt. He didn't act like a movie villain. He offered me a salary that was more stable than my old draws. He set up a retirement plan for me through the company. He paid off the most urgent debts and created a plan to unwind the rest. My relief came tangled with guilt. Relief that the shop wasn't collapsing. Guilt because that relief rested on Cal's ownership, on my willingness to let someone else carry the risk while I kept the title of manager like a comforting costume. Tom, meanwhile, spiraled. Without access to money, he grew sullen, then frantic. He begged me not to leave him. He threatened me. He promised therapy. He hinted again about the things he could say. One afternoon, Cal called me into the conference room and said, "Your husband tried to take out a loan against the business again." I felt my breath catch. He can't. He's not authorized. Cal slid over an application. Tom had used old letterhead and forged Cal's signature. Cal's voice was flat. "I'm reporting it." I stared at the paper and realized the false resolution had been just that. False. The crisis hadn't ended. It had only changed shape. Tom was arrested 2 weeks later. Not dramatically, no handcuffs on the lawn, but quietly, like a debt finally due. He called me from jail and cried. He said he loved me. He said he'd ruined everything. He said, "Please don't let them take the house." I didn't know what to say, because the house was already half gone on paper. Cal kept the shop running. He asked me to stay, and I did because I didn't know who I was without the place. Clients kept ordering. Employees kept clocking in. Life kept moving forward the way it always does, even after something inside you breaks. People have asked if Cal ever brought up high school, if he ever made me pay emotionally for that laugh. He didn't, which somehow made it worse. He didn't need to. The ledger did it for him. I sold my engagement ring to cover an attorney retainer. I refinanced the house under my name alone, accepting terms that will follow me into old age. I signed divorce papers without crying, then cried in my car afterward, not because I missed Tom, but because I couldn't believe I'd let my need for control turn into a blind spot big enough to swallow my life. Cal and I rarely speak about anything beyond work now. Sometimes I catch him watching me when he thinks I'm not looking, not with warmth, not with hatred, just with that quiet attention of someone tallying. The shop sign still has my name on it, faded but readable. Customers think it means something. It used to. At night, when I balance the books, I still feel that old calm settle over me for a moment, the comfort of numbers lining up. And then I remember how many of those numbers are someone else's, how much of my stability is borrowed, and how laughter can echo for decades in places you don't expect, like an unpaid bill tucked into a drawer you forgot to open.